Since January of 2023, 3 years ago now, I've been giving sort of educational homilies on different topics having to do with the teaching of the Catholic Church. And I've divided these topics into sections that will serve and have served as different volumes of a book that I'm self-publishing, I guess you could call it. So far, we finished Volume 1, which is the Trinity, Volume 2, which is the Church, Volume 3, which are the Sacraments of Initiation, and this spring we should be getting Volume 4, which is the Mass. And I've also preached on the topics that will make up Volume 5 and 6. So now we're ready to start the final topic that will make up Volume 7, and that is, it'll be the end of this years-long project, finally. The new topic we're going to be talking about is Catholic morality. So the next few months we'll cover morality in general, how to evaluate the morality of a situation, the Catholic response to modern moral beliefs, how to navigate morally difficult scenarios, and finally we will cover the Catholic social and political teaching. I have no idea how long this will take. I'm hoping by the end of the summer we'll be finally done with this. So I estimated 3 years. It's going to take 3.5 from the very beginning. So first of all, let's give a definition to the word morality. And morality is simply the study of what we are supposed to do. And what we're supposed to do depends a great deal on the set of things that a person values. You can typically tell what somebody values by their actions. What is it that they're most interested in? What is it that they're striving for? And it's our actions that express to other people what type of character we have, who we are at our core. And it's that character which then determines essentially how we be remembered, our destiny, and our eternity. And we just went really deep, really fast. Morality is affected by our values, which are expressed in our actions, which demonstrate our character, which determines our eternity. Now, not every decision that we make in life is so dramatic as that. Some of the things we value are focused on very short-term goals, like eating and health and work, paying the bills. But it would be foolish to stop at those things. C.S. Lewis, at the end of his Chronicles of Narnia, he says that this life is only the title page of a great book, and that eternity is the rest of the pages and all the chapters. If we don't have long-term focus beyond this life, then we're sort of missing the point of morality. St. Irenaeus, one of the church fathers, he said, "The glory of God is man fully alive." The values that the world tells us to care about are almost always exclusively selfish, or if they are directed toward helping others, it's usually, just to look good doing it and to feel appreciated, feel good about ourselves. Social media essentially has become a way of telling other people how quote-unquote blessed we are. But being fully alive isn't just caring about yourself. It means reaching out to all the possibilities that God offers us. And when we stop caring about anything other than ourselves or people's perception of us, then we fail to reach our potential that we're made for. We fail to reach the purpose for which we're made for. So how do we know which things to value? What should we want to live for? What should be most important to us? It's actually pretty simple. Not so easy, but it's pretty simple. The church teaches us that we were made for happiness, specifically to know and love and serve the Lord in this life and to be happy with Him in the next. Happiness is, in fact, the goal of all church teaching, believe it or not. And happiness is built into us. The things that we should value are the things that make us happy. And the church teaches us that the greatest value is the one that brings us the greatest happiness. You might be thinking, Father, I know a lot of things that people do that make them happy, but sure as heck isn't going to get them to heaven. And that's true. So perhaps we should give a definition to happiness to know what the church actually means. So happiness is simply when our desire for something good is satisfied. And this definition works well because it takes into account both long-term happiness and short-term happiness. So by this definition, it tells us that ribs and mashed potatoes can make you happy, that winning a state title can make you happy, that friendship can make you happy, and that true love can make you happy. Happiness is when our longing for a good thing is satisfied. And that is built into us. Whenever we act, whenever we do anything, every choice that we make is to do something, to obtain something that we perceive to be good. The key word, though, is perceive. Every bad choice that we make is because we thought that it would make us happy, at least in the short term. Even when we do things to our own detriment, that we know are, to our own detriment, it's almost always for what seems like a reason, or at least an attractive reason to us. So how do we determine the things that we ought to value the most? The Jesuit priest, Father Robert Spitzer, determined using the writings of Aristotle, the Greek philosophers, and the church fathers, that different types of things bring us different levels of happiness. And he framed this in what he calls the 4 levels of happiness. Now, you're not going to find the 4 levels of happiness like defined in the Catechism. This is just a way for us to sort of wrap our heads around it and think about making good choices. So Father Spitzer divides the 4 levels of happiness into 2 groups, the lower and the higher forms of happiness. And the lower forms, they are far more immediate and intense. They are short-lived and narrow in focus. The lower forms of happiness are, generally speaking, material things, and they tend to break down rather quickly into unhappiness. And that's not to say that they're bad, it's just that they're temporary, short-lived, and of this world. The higher forms of happiness are more enduring, they are more deeply satisfying, but they also are more abstract and they're less quickly attained. Sometimes it takes work. The higher levels of happiness tend to be more emotional and intellectual and spiritual. And in the end, they do not break down into unhappiness. They avoid unhappiness altogether. So we're going to take a look at the 4 levels of happiness today and call it good. So the first level of happiness is happiness from a material thing. This is how ice cream and popcorn and crab legs make me happy. Not altogether, though. It's a happiness that gives us immediate gratification, right? It's also very short-lived. Like the crab legs aren't making you happy hours after you eat them. Maybe the thought of it would, but the actual crab legs themselves don't. Level 2 happiness is what Father Spitzer calls ego-comparative happiness. So essentially, this is happiness gained from competition or comparison. It's the happiness that comes from personal accomplishment, achieving a health goal, promotion at work, winning a game of basketball, overcoming a tough opponent. While achievements, they do in fact bring us happiness, however, it can often break down into self-criticism and in the light of failure, and failure is unavoidable. At some point we're going to fail. And so in some cases it can even lead to a sense of worthlessness. And this is because when we compare ourselves to another, there tends to be winners and losers. And this is sort of an unstable happiness, which is why it's included in the lower levels of happiness. And it often requires us to constantly perform or even outdo ourselves, which can be the opposite of joy. And sadly, this is where a lot of people's happiness ends, because this is the happiness that it's expressed in fashion and men's health magazines, and it's the self-help type of happiness. And the problem with this is that when we operate only out of level 1 and 2 desires, then we will in the end judge ourselves and other people in terms of health, or looks, or achievements, or possessions, or talents, or intelligence, or power, or authority. And they become the barometer for success and happiness. If a person has less of these, then they seem to be lesser persons. But there is far more to happiness than what we can achieve or what we can possess. Level 3 happiness, which now we're moving into the higher levels of happiness, is what Father Spitzer calls contributive happiness. This is the happiness that comes from seeing the good in others and doing good for others. He calls it contributive happiness, but you can just think of it as service. You are serving others. If a person living in level 3 happiness, they look at other people and they see their inherent goodness and their lovability. They are moved to protect and help and care for others. But even here, we fail to reach the highest levels of happiness because we can't pretend to be able to solve everybody's problems. We can't pretend to be someone else's everything. That's unhealthy to do. People fail. We fail other people, which means that even level 3 happiness, while it is wonderful and worth dedicating your life toward, ultimately it is imperfect and it's temporary. Eventually we will disappoint somebody and come across a situation where we will be unable to help, and that will disappoint us. And so we have to move beyond that into what Father Spitzer calls the transcendent. This is the highest and the 4th level of happiness. This is our desire for the fullness of goodness and beauty and truth and justice and love, and it's beyond what we are capable of doing on our own. We know this as Christians. Our ultimate happiness is found only in a relationship with Jesus Christ. St. Augustine, the great church father of the 5th century, he famously said, "Our hearts are restless, O God, until they rest in thee." Meaning that we were made for God. This is innate within the human soul. Since the beginning of time, even before God really revealed himself to us, people have sensed the reality of this happening within our very selves, that there are powerful hidden forces at work in our lives. You might call it the quote-unquote universe, or lowercase gods, lowercase g gods, or spirits, or ancestors, or fate, or Mother Nature, or the force. But we are built with a longing to encounter the sacred, to ascend to friendship with God. And so there will always be some void in a life if friendship with God is absent. And that's because we don't want less than perfection. And the only place we find true perfection is outside of ourselves in the divine. Unfortunately, sometimes our method of pursuing these different goods causes more harm than benefit. And this is where morality comes in and why I'm even talking about the levels of happiness. We will at times seek to acquire one good to the detriment of another higher good. And the result is always damage to ourselves and to other people. So this is the basic rule of thumb when it comes to morality. You can kind of summarize it all like this, and we'll be going into more detail the next few months. But the rule of thumb for all of morality is that if you pursue something good, but in the process do damage to it, then your pursuit of that good thing is morally incorrect. Your estimation or your judgment wasn't morally correct. For example, level 1 food makes us happy, but gluttony destroys level 2 health. The level 3 pursuit of companionship is good, but using someone for sexual gratification destroys that good. Pursuit of knowledge is a level 2 form of happiness. It's an achievement. But gossip is knowledge that destroys level 3 happiness of service to others. Physical beauty is a level 1 and probably a level 2 happiness, I would think. But immodesty can lead to lust and objectification, which destroys level 3 and 4 happiness. So when we pursue the lower levels of happiness by sort of attacking the higher levels of happiness, we have things out of order. And that's why the church describes such actions and inclinations as, quote-unquote, disordered. Now, when the church says something is disordered, it's not making a medical diagnosis saying they have this, disorder. It is simply saying that something is out of order, like the actual, meaning of the word. It's disordered. So what we need then is a strategy for pursuing all of these goods in the right way. And that's where Jesus comes in. Now, the public image of Catholic morality is that it is joyless and repressive and dehumanizing and impersonal and misogynistic and boring and hypocritical and overbearing and old-fashioned and judgmental. But in actuality, Catholic morality is about the love between Christ and his people. Morality's goal is eternal heavenly happiness. That's why we exist. It's why we were created. It's the meaning and purpose of our life. And you can think of Catholic morality, instead of a bunch of rules, you can think of them as a list of directions. We follow directions on our Google Maps to get to our goal. But what happens if the GPS goes out or the phone is out of battery charge? Or even more appropriately, what would happen if you were to take away all the roads altogether? Getting there isn't possible, or at the very least, it is really, really difficult, and it's going to take a really long time to get to your destination. Morality has its laws and its rules, just like a city has its streets, and streets are essential to a city, but they're not the essence of a city, the people are. They're simply the way that we get to our destination, the way that we get home. The moral law is sort of the same thing. It's not the essence of happiness, but it is sort of the streets that we take on the way to happiness. It is the way that we get there. So if we value eternal things and eternal happiness, most of all, and highest of all, then we must have a roadmap to get to our eternal home, which is the moral law. The Catechism of the Catholic Church says, true happiness is not found in riches or well-being, in human fame or power, or in any human achievement, however beneficial it may be, such as science, technology, and art, or indeed any creature, but in God alone, the source of every good and of all love. God alone satisfies. Without knowing our specific purpose, life is aimless. The mature person enters deeper into this mystery, not afraid to ask the hard questions. What was I made for? What is my purpose? What have I been born to do? The short answer to those difficult questions is happiness. The short answer is that we trust in the words of John the Baptist as he reveals who Jesus is in our gospel that we just heard, who says, I saw the Spirit come down like a dove from heaven and remain upon him. Now I have seen and testified that he is the Son of God. The short answer to our moral questions is to listen and to trust in the words of Jesus. The long answer is what we'll be talking about for the next few months.